There were three main reasons for the decline of the Holy Roman Empire from 1517 to 1648, which were the election of Charles V as Holy Roman Emperor, the Protestant Reformation and the 30 Years' War, and finally the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. So let's start all the way back in 1519 with Charles V. Charles V was elected King of Germany in 1519 after his Habsburg paternal grandfather, Maximilian I, died. He bribed the electors and the princes to vote for him, and the Habsburg Empire was the biggest it had ever been at this time. He left Spain, where he was living to rule at the time, to rule the Holy Roman Empire. His main goal was to unite the Holy Roman Empire to create one vast Habsburg Empire, but he had two things standing in his way: the Valois in France and the Protestant Reformation. The Habsburg and the Valois argued over territories such as Italy, the Netherlands, northern Spain, and the Rhineland, who owned these lands. These disagreements led to the Habsburg-Valois War, also called the Italian War, from 1521 to 1526. As Stefan Gruber, Ph.D., put it, Charles had his eyes on the Duchy of Burgundy and areas in southern France and Italy. Francis I felt uncomfortable with Habsburgs in power on his southern and eastern borders and advanced into the Netherlands and Italy. So during this whole time, Charles V was super concerned with his empire, but then the Protestant Reformation happened. So Martin Luther wrote his 95 Theses in 1517, and his theses were mainly against the sale of indulgences by the Roman Catholic Church. He was summoned to the Diet of Worms in 1521 to renounce his theses, and he refused to recant them and was then excommunicated by Charles V. Charles V was deeply Catholic and hated Martin Luther for making a mockery of the church. But many bourgeoisie liked Luther's individualistic method of salvation by faith alone, as opposed to Catholicism's teaching of obedience and holiness through poverty. Later on, when other Protestant religions like Calvinism and Anabaptism were formed, there was a peasants' revolt from 1524 to 1525. Peasants took advantage of the changing atmosphere brought on by the Reformation to demand freedom from oppression of nobles and landlords. While some leaders like Ulrich Zwingli, leader of the Reformation in Switzerland, supported it, Martin Luther condemned it, which led to its ultimate failure. During this entire time period, the 30 Years' War was also happening, which centered around the Habsburg Empire, so basically all of Europe. The 30 Years' War happened for a lot of reasons and was one of the first wars fought across Europe. It's said to have started in 1618, so this is after Charles V, during the reign of Ferdinand II, his brother. Ferdinand tried to impose a Roman Catholic absolutism on his domains, but the Protestant nobles of Austria and Bohemia rose up in protest. After 5 years, Ferdinand won. But then the Swedish invaded the empire and won over a lot of the German princes because the guy who invaded it was anti-Roman Catholic. There were other battles going on during this time, but most of the battles fought in the 30 Years' War were fought in the principalities of the Holy Roman Empire. In addition to being Europe's battleground during this time, many of the armies were mercenaries who couldn't collect their pay, which led armies to ravaging through towns and farms they marched through. Germany was hit really hard by all of this. Like, really hard. This was one of the worst wars in European history, and a majority of it was fought in the German principalities. After 30 years, who would have guessed it? Europe met in Westphalia to bring an end to all the bloodshed, which brings us to our final cause of the decline of the Holy Roman Empire, the Peace of Westphalia. A lot of things were decided in the Peace of Westphalia, but mostly who gets what territory. All territorial decisions favored Sweden, France, and their allies. The Peace of Westphalia also confirmed the Peace of Augsburg from 1555, which granted princes to choose either Catholicism or Lutheranism as their religion for their territory. Westphalia also added Calvinism, which extended its religious toleration. The differing religions to choose contributed to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. The thing that really did it in, though, was how all German princes had full sovereignty over their domains. This was the final blow. It led to growth in areas like Austria, Bavaria, and Brandenburg, but left the Holy Roman Emperor and the Diet just a shadow of what it used to be. So, let's go over the three main points that led to the decline in the power of the Holy Roman Empire from 1517 to 1648, one more time. First, Charles V was elected Holy Roman Emperor. He attempted to control the vast Habsburg Empire, but just couldn't do it with the Protestant Reformation happening. and then the Protestant Reformation and the 30 Years' War ravaged the area. German princes used these new religions as a tool against the emperors to show how they wanted autonomy over their domains, and the 30 Years' War happened mostly in Germany, which left the principalities struck the hardest. And finally, the Peace of Westphalia dissolved much of the emperor and diet's rule by giving the German princes rule over their domains. This all led to an ununified Holy Roman Empire, which would eventually dissolve in 1806.